I used to think I had life figured out. At 27, things were finally falling into place. Steady job, a fiance who smiled like sunlight, and a future I could almost touch. But the universe loves irony. That night, I left work early, holding Hyejine's favorite jjajangmyeon in one hand and a small bouquet of lilies in the other. Nothing special, just a simple surprise. She'd been distant lately, and I wanted to remind her why we were getting married in the first place. The door wasn't locked. Strange. Hygiene, I called softly, stepping inside. I didn't even make it past the hallway before I froze. The food slipped from my grip, cartons spilling across the floor. The flowers followed, petals scattering like snow. Hygiene, my fiancé, in our bed, with Donghyun, my best friend. Her wide eyes met mine. His voice cracked with panic. Min-jae, wait. But I didn't wait. I couldn't. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. If I stayed another second, I would break into pieces in front of them. So I turned and walked out. Silent. Numb. By morning, the whispers had already started. Messages pinged on my phone. Are you okay? I can't believe she did that to you. Min-jae, you don't deserve this. Pity. Sympathy. Condescension. Every word made my skin crawl. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to be the fool whose fiancé left him for his best friend. When Sunday dinner rolled around, my stomach twisted into knots. My family was waiting, their eyes sharp with questions, their hearts heavy with concern. I sat there at the long wooden table, the weight of their pity suffocating me. My father cleared his throat. Son, we heard about Hygiene. We're so sorry. But you don't have to explain anything. Just know we're here for you. That pity. That softness. I couldn't stand it. My chest clenched so tight I thought I might choke. Before I realized what I was doing, the words tumbled out. I didn't marry her because I'm gay. The silence was deafening. My mother's hand stilled halfway to her mouth. My aunt nearly dropped her spoon. My father's brows furrowed deeply. You're gay? He asked carefully, like the word might explode if he said it too loudly. I forced myself to nod, though sweat prickled down my back. Yes. That's why it didn't work. That's why all of this happened. It wasn't true. Or maybe it was in some part of me I had never explored. But at that moment, it was a shield. A lie to hide the truth. That I had been betrayed, humiliated, stripped bare. My mother sniffled into her napkin. Oh, Min-jae, you should have told us sooner. We'll support you, always. My father nodded stiffly. Yes. Always. The rest of dinner passed in awkward silence. I barely ate, staring at my untouched bowl of rice, wondering what I had just done. And then my older sister leaned forward, her eyes glinting like she had solved a puzzle. You know, this might actually be good for you. You've heard of Kang Seo-jun, haven't you? My heart stuttered. The billionaire? Not just any billionaire, she said. The Kang family has been trying to put rumors to rest about him for years. He's handsome, powerful, and still unmarried. If you too, she trailed off with a knowing smile. You can't be serious. But she was. They all were. By the end of the week, thanks to whispered connections and insistent family pressure, I found myself sitting across from Kang Seo-jun in a private lounge. He was intimidating. Tall, broad shoulders, black suit tailored perfectly to his frame. His presence filled the room with a kind of heavy silence that demanded respect. His dark eyes fixed on me with a coldness that made my pulse stumble. We sat in silence until his voice cut through the air, deep, smooth, and sharp. My family wants me to marry. Your family wants to protect you. I don't care about the reasons. But if we do this, it will be a contract. Not love. Not romance. Just business. My throat felt dry. Every instinct told me to run. But I had lied myself into this, and now there was no way out. So I forced a shaky smile. Fine. A deal, then. He extended his hand across the table. Cold, steady, unflinching. I placed mine in his, my heart racing. And just like that, I, Yoon Min-jae, heartbroken fool and liar, had agreed to marry Kang Seo-jun, the cold billionaire. A marriage born from betrayal. A contract sealed by lies. And a truth waiting to unravel. The wedding was a blur. I remembered the flash of cameras, the endless murmur of reporters, the tight grip of Seo-jun's hand on mine as we walked down the steps of the Seoul City Hall. My heart hammered in my chest, not from joy or love, but from sheer disbelief. I had never imagined my name splashed across every gossip site, headlines screaming. Cold billionaire Kang Seo-jun marries unexpected partner Yoon Min-jae. Marriage of convenience or true love? Seo-jun finally settles down. I couldn't even bring myself to read the comments. Inside the car after the ceremony, silence stretched between us like a blade. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, glancing at Seo-jun's perfect profile. He looked calm, unbothered, like he had just signed another business contract. For him, maybe this was just a contract. For me, it was survival. When we reached his penthouse, I almost choked. It wasn't a home, it was a palace in the sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, marble floors that gleamed under soft lights, and furniture so sleek it looked like it belonged in a design magazine. This is, I muttered under my breath, bigger than my entire apartment building. Seo-jun ignored me, shrugging off his jacket and hanging it neatly on the rack. Without looking back, he said, "Follow me." I trailed after him like a lost puppy, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. He opened a door to a large, immaculate bedroom. "This is your room." I blinked. "My room?" He gave me a cold look. "Did you think we'd be sharing a bed?" Heat rushed to my face. "And no, I didn't," I stammered, hating how small my voice sounded. Seo-jun's gaze lingered on me, sharp and unreadable, before he turned away. "There are rules if this arrangement is going to work," he said flatly. "Rule 1, don't enter my room without permission. Rule 2, don't touch my things. Rule 3, whatever happens in public, we act like a couple. In private, you stay out of my way." My stomach dropped. Rules. Of course. Leave it to Kang Seo-jun to turn even marriage into a list of regulations. Still, I forced a smile, even though it felt brittle. "Got it. Rules. Easy enough." He didn't respond, already walking away. His back was straight, his presence commanding even in silence. I hated how small I felt in comparison, how insignificant. The days that followed were a strange mix of chaos and routine. To the world, we were the perfect couple. Arm in arm at charity galas, smiling faintly at cameras, our fingers brushing just enough to look believable. Sometimes Seo-jun would lean in close, whispering something meaningless just to make it look real. And every time his breath brushed my ear, my heart stuttered like a fool. But behind closed doors? Ice. We passed each other like strangers in the hallway. He worked late into the night, phone pressed to his ear, his sharp voice echoing through the penthouse. I stayed in my room, reading or scrolling mindlessly, wondering how the hell I had ended up here. The only time we spoke was when we had to, like the night of the charity gala. I stood in front of the mirror, fumbling with my tie. My hands shook, and no matter how many times I tried, the knot came out crooked. "Pathetic," I muttered to myself. Then suddenly his reflection appeared behind me. Seo-jun's tall frame loomed over mine, his expression unreadable. "Move," he said. Before I could react, his fingers brushed mine aside and took hold of the tie. His movements were precise, efficient, his knuckles grazing my chest as he adjusted the fabric. I held my breath, my pulse racing at the unexpected closeness. "There," he said, stepping back once it was perfect. Thanks," I stammered, my face burning. He didn't answer, already turning away. But I noticed it, the faintest flicker of something in his eyes before the cold mask slid back into place. The gala itself was suffocating. Endless chatter, fake smiles, people looking at me with thinly veiled curiosity. Why him? Their eyes seemed to say. Why would Kang Seo-jun marry someone like him? I wanted to disappear. But then I felt it, Seo-jun's hand sliding into mine. Firm. Steady. Protective. He leaned down, his lips dangerously close to my ear. Smile. Don't let them see weakness. I forced my lips into a curve, even though my heart was pounding for a completely different reason. For hours, we played our parts. The perfect couple. The unshakable partners. But somewhere between the staged smiles and meaningless small talk, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't pretending anymore. Every time Seo-jun's hand lingered on my back, every time his gaze swept over me, something inside me shifted. I told myself it was just nerves, just adrenaline, but deep down I knew the truth. I was falling. Falling for a man who didn't want me. Falling because a lie had pushed me into his world. Later that night, back at the penthouse, I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. My tie was loose, my jacket discarded. Seo-jun stood by the window, staring out at the glittering city below. His profile was sharp, his posture rigid, like a man carved from stone. Why do you do it? I asked before I could stop myself. He glanced at me. Do what? Live like this. Cold. Alone. Keeping everyone at a distance. His eyes hardened. It's none of your business. I flinched but pressed on. Maybe. But we're married now, remember? Even if it's fake, we're still in this together. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then, to my shock, he spoke softly. Because it's easier, he said, his voice low. When you let people close, they betray you. When you care too much, you bleed. I don't bleed for anyone. My chest ached at his words. I wanted to argue, to tell him not everyone was like that, but I bit my tongue. Maybe I didn't have the right. Still, as I watched him standing there, illuminated by the city lights, I realized something. Seo-jun wasn't cold because he couldn't feel. He was cold because he had been hurt. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to be the one to melt the ice around his heart. Of course, I didn't say any of that. Instead, I laughed weakly and said, "Well, you're stuck with me now, whether you like it or not." To my surprise, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. And in that fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of the man beneath the mask. The man I was slowly, helplessly falling for. Living with Kang Seo-jun was like living in a fortress made of glass. Beautiful from the outside, but if you got too close, you'd cut yourself on the sharp edges. He wasn't cruel, not exactly, just cold, calculated, and precise about everything he did. Breakfast at 7 sharp, black coffee only. Phone calls scheduled down to the minute. A workout routine that could break most athletes. His life was a perfectly constructed machine, and I was the single bolt thrown into the gears. At first, we existed like shadows in the same house. Polite nods, curt greetings, and the occasional instruction from him about some public event we had to attend. But little by little, the cracks began to show. It started small. One evening, I walked into the kitchen to find him standing at the counter, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He was cooking. The sight startled me so much I almost dropped the glass in my hand. "You cook," I blurted out before my brain could catch up. His eyes flicked up at me, annoyed. "I don't have to explain myself to you." I grinned despite myself. Seo-jun, the billionaire chef. Who would have thought? Don't make fun of me. But his ears turned the faintest shade of pink, and for some reason it made my chest tighten. The next crack came after a press conference. We had been paraded in front of cameras again, hands clasped, answering questions about our married life. I hated those events. They made me feel like a fraud. But Seo-jun carried himself like a king, every answer cool, flawless. Until one reporter asked, "So, Seo-jun SSI, what made you fall for Minji SSI?" I froze. My palms grew sweaty. How was he supposed to answer that when we both knew this was all fake? But then he turned his head, and for the first time, his eyes softened in public. "Because he's different," he said simply. The cameras flashed, the crowd murmured, but I couldn't hear any of it. My heart was pounding too loud. Different. The word echoed in my chest long after the conference ended. It was that night, after the reporters left and the lights faded, that something shifted between us. We were back at the penthouse, sitting in silence. I sipped water to calm my nerves, while he stared out the window at the glittering city below. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Why did you say that?" I asked quietly. "Say what?" "That I'm different." He glanced at me, his gaze sharp. "Would you have preferred I said you're ordinary?" I blinked. "That's not what I mean. I don't understand why you'd say something like that when it's not." I cut myself off before I could say true. Seo-jun's lips curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. "Who says it's not true?" My breath caught. I wanted to ask more, but the weight in his eyes warned me not to. Instead, silence settled between us, heavy and charged. The walls between us cracked further one rainy night. I woke to the sound of the storm, lightning flashing across the windows. Unable to sleep, I wandered to the living room, only to find Seo-jun already there, sitting on the couch, a glass of whiskey in hand. "You're up," he said without looking at me. "Couldn't sleep." "Storms." I hesitated. "Yeah." He poured another glass and slid it across the table to me. I took it, surprised. For a while, we drank in silence, the storm outside echoing the storm inside me. Then I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since we met. "Why are you like this?" His head turned sharply. "Like what?" "Cold. Distant. Acting like nothing touches you." His jaw tightened. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. But then, in a voice softer than I'd ever heard from him, he said, "Because when you let people in, they hurt you. And when you care too much, they leave. I've learned that lesson enough times." I swallowed hard. "Who hurt you?" He let out a low, bitter laugh. "Everyone I've trusted." The pain in his voice twisted something inside me. I wanted to reach out, to tell him not everyone was like that, but I stayed frozen. Because hadn't I lied to him too? Hadn't I already betrayed his trust without him knowing? Still, in that moment, I saw him not as the cold billionaire, but as a man carrying scars too deep to heal. And against my better judgment, I wanted to be the one to heal them. The line between pretend and real blurred completely a week later. We were at another event, forced to put on a show for the press. At one point, the cameras pushed us closer together, too close, and Seo-jun's hand found mine. I expected him to let go the moment the flash ended. But he didn't. He held on, his grip steady, his gaze burning into mine. And then, as if in slow motion, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, soft, tentative, but real. My heart exploded in my chest. The kiss lasted only a second, maybe two, but it was enough to set my entire world spinning. Because for the first time, I couldn't tell if he was pretending. And worse, I knew I wasn't pretending anymore. That night, lying awake in my bed, I replayed the kiss over and over. The way his lips felt. The way his eyes darkened right before. The way I leaned into him like I had been waiting my whole life. I pressed a hand to my chest, my pulse racing. This was dangerous. I had gotten into this marriage on a lie. A reckless, desperate lie. And now, I was falling for the man I had no right to love. But no matter how much I told myself to stop, my heart wouldn't listen. Kang Seo-jun was no longer just the cold billionaire I had married out of convenience. He was the man who had kissed me like it meant something. And I was terrified, because I wanted him to do it again. I had convinced myself I could keep the lie buried forever. That if I played my role well enough, if I smiled for the cameras and obeyed Seo-jun's rules, he would never know. But lies have a way of rotting from the inside out. It started with a message. One afternoon, I found my phone buzzing relentlessly. When I finally checked, my blood turned to ice. From Hygiene. So this is your new life? Pretending to be gay just because I broke your heart? Pathetic. Does Kang Seo-jun even know the truth? I ignored it. Deleted it. But the next one came. And the next. Each sharper, uglier than the last. Until one night she called. Her voice was honeyed poison. You owe me, Min-jae. Do you know how humiliating it was when you abandoned me at the altar? Everyone thinks I was the villain, but I can change that. Unless you want me to tell the press, and your billionaire husband, that you're a liar. My chest tightened. What do you want, Hygiene? She laughed softly. Simple. Money. A few billion one should do. Or maybe your silence. You leave Seo-jun disappear from his life, and I stay quiet. Choose, Min-jae. Pay up, or watch everything burn. I tried to hide it, but Seo-jun saw the tension in me. He always did. His gaze lingered when I flinched at every phone buzz, when my smile trembled. What's going on? He asked one evening, his voice low and suspicious. Nothing, I lied. Just work stress. But he wasn't fooled. His eyes narrowed. He didn't press further, though, and that hurt more than if he'd shouted. It meant he was preparing himself to be disappointed in me. The breaking point came at a gala, surrounded by flashing cameras. Hygiene cornered me in the restroom, her red lips curling into a cruel smile. You didn't pay, she whispered, shoving her phone in my face. A recording played, me drunkenly venting to a friend weeks ago. I panicked, okay? I'm not even gay. It was just a lie to survive. My blood ran cold. I'll release it, she said, eyes gleaming. Unless you walk out there, break things off with Seo-jun in front of everyone, and admit you used him. I froze, terror clawing at my throat. But when I stepped out, Seo-jun was waiting by the door. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, and I knew. He had heard. Back home, the silence was unbearable. Is it true? His voice was soft, but it cut sharper than a blade. Tears blurred my vision. Seo-jun, please let me explain. Answer me, Min-jae. Did you lie? Yes, I whispered. And then everything spilled out. The betrayal, the shame, the stupid, desperate lie that had snowballed into this mess. I told him about Hygiene's blackmail, how I was cornered, how I hadn't known what else to do. I never meant to hurt you, I said, voice shaking. At first, it was survival. But then I met you. I loved you. I still love you. That part was never a lie. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Just turned away. Get out, he said quietly. And for the first time since I was a child, I truly felt like I had nothing. Days passed in a blur of shame. Articles exploded with headlines about the scandal. Hygiene released part of the recording anyway, twisting it to paint me as a manipulator. I stayed in a dingy apartment, unable to eat, unable to sleep, my heart breaking at the thought of Seo-jun alone in that penthouse we once shared. But then I realized, running had been my mistake from the start. If I wanted him back, I had to fight. I found him at the Han River late one night, standing against the railing, staring at the dark water. My legs shook as I approached. Seo-jun. He turned, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. Why are you here? I swallowed hard. To tell you the truth. All of it. And I did. Every detail, every shameful corner of my heart. I told him about Hye-jin's threats, about how scared I'd been to lose him, about how much I hated myself for starting this marriage with a lie. But this, what I feel for you, it isn't fake. It never was. You're the only real thing I've had in so long, and if you hate me forever, I'll accept it. But please don't doubt that I love you. Tears burned my throat, but I stood firm. For once, I wouldn't run. His silence stretched unbearable. Then slowly, he stepped closer. His hand rose, trembling, and cupped my cheek. You lied, he said, voice rough. You broke my trust. Do you know how much that destroyed me? I know. My voice cracked. And I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it right, if you let me. He let out a shaky breath. And yet, despite everything, I can't stop loving you, Min-jae. Before I could answer, his lips crashed onto mine, fierce, desperate, a kiss of anger and forgiveness all at once. I clung to him, sobbing, as the walls between us shattered. When we finally broke apart, he whispered against my lips, no more lies. If we do this, it's real. I nodded, heart breaking open. No more lies. I promise. The next morning, Seo-jun's lawyers filed charges against Hye-jin for blackmail and defamation. The media shifted its focus, painting her as the villain she truly was. And when we walked out together, hand in hand, facing the cameras, this time, I didn't feel like I was pretending. Because for the first time since it all began, it was real.